Hey, welcome back to this Leading in the Moment podcast here at the Social Television Network. I'm your host, Chris Coraggio. We do this with leaders in our community to provide some information, hopefully some solutions and some hope as we all deal with this COVID-19 pandemic, this crisis that we are right in the middle of. And this episode, we're going to specifically talk about something that's maybe on the back burner, but something very important to many of us, sports. More specifically, local sports here in the Valley. And the leader in the moment that I have on the line is Mr. Bruce Cooper. He has been at Channel 12, KPNX, for 34 years. I can't believe it's been that long. But, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us in the Leading in the Moment podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Okay, so everything, we want to get your perspective because you live... You breathe sports, local sports. You are one of the deans of all sportscasters here in town, no question about that. I know you started your career at Channel 12 off camera, but you've been on camera for decades and decades. Let's talk a little bit about just your thoughts, your overall thoughts about every sport being shut down. It was the right thing to do. I would be sure that you would concur with that, but how are you dealing with all that?
Well, no question, it was the right thing to do. I mean, look, we all love the game, but we're talking about lives here, and lives are far, far, far more important. So that being said, it's been a difficult transition period for me, if you will. I mean, sports has been such a big part of my life. It fills a great deal of my life, and there's a tremendous void now without sports. And in fact, historically in our country, during difficult times, sports has always served as an outlet, a means to escape whatever that situation may be for a particular individual. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's just a disaster or whatever. Sports has always served as a relief relative to that, and now sports is part of that. I mean, this is real life stuff, and I hope that people are really taking it seriously because, man, as I look around the globe and see countries that have really been hit hard, and I guess none more so now than Italy. I mean, it's really devastating to see. But again, at the same time, I now realize just how important sports are in my particular life because it's left a big void, a big empty for me.
And I'm the same way, Bruce, as you know. But I'd like to get your perspective on this. So, like. When was it? Maybe a week and a half ago when we maybe 2 weeks ago when the NBA shut down, and then right after that the NCAA Tournament decided. First they were going to play with no fans. Remember that? And then they decided when they followed the NBA and the NHL in saying, you know what, we're not going to have a March Madness. The NCAA Tournament is not going to be played this year, and such a huge. I guess it was just an eye-opening, like, what? You couldn't believe it. This was 2 weeks ago. Right now, I don't think I've thought about the NCAA tournament not being here in the last maybe week or so. Are people getting used? I guess my question to you, are people getting used to, in your circles, getting used to not having sports right now?
Well, it's the new normal, and I don't know that we'll ever get fully adjusted to it in that regard. But yeah. Look, I was devastated and disappointed when the NCAA canceled. Unlike the other sports who have postponed, meaning that they will resume when all is clear, but the NCAA just flat out canceled, and that's where I think that the leadership there went wrong. I mean, even if you play it beyond the school year, the academic school year, which I guess in most cases would be around May or June. Even if you push it beyond that, so what? I mean, baseball and track crowns its champion after the school years are over anyway. I just think that this would have given a lot of outlet in a sense of joy to not only the competitors and fans and family, but to us who enjoy the game, who make it a big part of our year. I mean, look, I'm so used to getting in March Madness pools and losing them all the time that now that I'm not going to be losing in this year's March Madness tournament. It's a big void, but there's no question. Postponing the games or was the right thing to do. And even if teams or leagues resume play again and decide to go without fans, I'm okay with that too. Anything we can do to get rid of this virus, to promote health and get back to our normal way of living, I'm all for.
It's interesting what you said. I never really thought about that because the NCAA canceled. Yes, that's the word, because they did, because it's held now every single year. The other sports have postponed. That's the word we're using now. But here's my thinking. I going by what you said, if you had your way for the NCAAs, we would have maybe a May Madness this year, right?
May Madness, June Madness, it's all good. Yeah, absolutely. Look, one of the things that I'm kind of big on, and I feel really bad for some of the current high school seniors or even just the college graduate seniors. I mean, their graduations, are going to be memorable for something other than what we normally expect it to be. That's a big momentous occasion in anyone's life. I mean, parents are there, the graduation caps. It's something that is a big momentous occasion in anyone's life, and to see that it could potentially be compromised is sad. And so same thing I have a feeling for these kids who play basketball March Madness, some of these seniors. I mean, this was their last go round. Some of the schools that have never been a part of March Madness for, decades and decades that were actually going to make it this year, they have that taken away. So if you just postpone it, these kids can still realize a lifelong dream. And I think dreams are a big part of one's life. And so I don't know what the schools are going to do, but because graduations are about big gatherings, and it's just sad to see. It really is.
Yeah, so, and I know that there was some talk. I haven't heard it in the last week or so, but maybe 2 weeks ago, when everything started to be shut down sports-wise, there was some talk that maybe for March Madness, for baseball, for the spring sports, maybe you just your seniors, whether they're high school, well, I guess college, we're talking collegiate, they would just be seniors next year. Give them the option, bring them back to play their senior year next year instead of this year. Now, I don't know how you actually get that done. It's hard to kind of organize that. Either everybody has to do it or nobody does it, I guess. And so I know that was an idea early on. I haven't heard much about it since. What is your take on that?
Well, the NCAA, they are definitely going to grant all the spring athletes an additional year. But as far as the winter athletes, and that would include the basketball, men's and women's, they're not going to, because they played basically 95% of their seasons. And we're only talking about the conference tournament and the NCAA tournaments that were compromised. But if you just extrapolate this thing out, let's say that let's take baseball, for instance.
Which today would have been opening day in Major League Baseball, by the way. Just let you know that. Yeah.
Right. And so you have a junior in Spencer Torkelson, who is thought to be the number one overall draft pick in baseball. Now, baseball obviously is pushing back its draft because they are expecting their season to start in and around the time that the draft would take place in June. So does Spencer, is he to decide to come back? And if you allow the seniors to come back, well, the coaching staff, they've already planned for their departure under normal circumstances by what you call recruiting.
Yeah.
So they've recruited players to replace the departed seniors. But if you allow the departed seniors to come, now you have an overcrowded roster. And now you know what that means? That means more money for the particular institution. because these institutions pay out scholarships and things like that. So you're paying. So not only are you missing out on tournament money by being a participant, in let's say the College World Series or whatever, you're missing out on that money, but now it's costing you more money because you have a bigger roster. So some of these schools that aren't so athletically gifted in terms of resources, they're definitely going to be compromised. So I don't know what the NCAA is going to do in that regard, but I do. But they've already said that they will allow the seniors in all spring sports to come back.
And to come back,
include ASU's women's softball
sure.
team as well.
Now that's if they choose to. Is that correct?
Sure, if they choose to. But
yeah.
I believe that I think in most of the women's athletics, especially let's just take softball because I talk about baseball. There's really not a professional league that these.
Of course,
ladies are
this is it.
Into.
Yes,
so
yes.
they would all probably
want
to.
Come back. Yes, I get that. Get that. You're right. It's just so hard to fathom, Bruce. Everything. I mean, this podcast could go on for 3 hours talking about the sport. It really can, because
sure.
It is more on the back burner because obviously the priority is everybody's health. But so many people's lives are surrounded by sports, and it's just hard to kind of wrap your head around how it's all going to shake out in the end. Now, let me ask you this. I mentioned Major League Baseball because today was supposed to be opening day. So if you look at the four major sports, Bruce, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, and the NFL, only one, the NFL, just due to when they play their season, only one has a shot at having a full regular season, uninterrupted. Because obviously the NBA and NHL have already shut down. We don't know if they're coming back for their playoffs or not. It looks like every day that we go on, they're not going to. I don't even know. It just feels like that to me. The Major League Baseball, we don't know when that's going to start. So let's just go point by point quickly, Bruce. Let's talk about baseball first, since today was going to be the opening day. What are you hearing? What is the sense that you have when we will see Major League Baseball start? Are they going to have to redo spring training? Are they going to go right into a regular season? What are you hearing at some point?
What I'm hearing is they're targeting like mid-May, and that would require them to have what we call a 2-week or a condensed spring training, if you will. So mid-May to early June would be a start point for baseball. Maybe mid-May is when they start playing the resuming shortened or scaled down spring training. But they are talking about resuming their baseball season. In fact, Commissioner Rob Manfred has come out and said that he wants baseball to be a part of the healing process, a part of the getting back to normalcy. So they will play a season. Those are coming from the words of the Commissioner Rob Manfred. Now, what they're trying to do is how would they handle the postseason, which would now extend beyond October, and so they're talking about using some warm weather cities, and some cities would have dome stadiums, which would put the Arizona and the Diamondbacks Chase Field into play. They would just play their postseason,
even if the Diamondbacks were
neutral sites,
yes,
as opposed to
I get it.
Home field.
Yeah, I get it. We saw this with 9/11 back in 2001. It was the first time ever that a World Series game or games were played in the month of November. And since then, we have had that, so they would push it back, obviously, even further into November or maybe even December.
They're talking about even in December.
Yeah,
Chris, now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay, let's talk about the NBA and the NHL. So a couple of weeks ago, they shut down their regular seasons. Their playoffs, both leagues' playoffs, would usually begin next month, mid to late April. What are you hearing? Let's go with the NBA first. What are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing with the NBA is that they're looking at maybe a mid-June start time, and with a mid-June start time, that would push postseason into late August.
Yeah.
They wouldn't begin their new season. Their new season typically starts in October with the preseason. Now they're talking about maybe a Black Friday or a late November tip for exhibition or preseason play with Christmas Day serving as
Wow.
opening day or tip
Wow.
day
I hadn't heard
in
that.
basketball.
I hadn't heard that, Bruce. That's great information. Just I know they're probably kicking around that idea because everything is fluid right now. We're not sure, but wow, that's something. What do you think the chances are that the NBA just washes out this season, sort of like 1994 baseball when there just wasn't a season?
Yeah, I don't think that is going to happen. From every commissioner is relying on CDC and some of the medical experts out there, and the experts or medical experts they're hearing from are telling them that this will pass. It's just a matter of time. How soon can it pass? But and basketball is even talking about when they resume, maybe they will resume again without fans.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. All it takes is one player to get it. And if one player like Rudy Gobert, I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's when I really, sadly to say on my part, when I really started taking things very seriously is when Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, the All-Star center, contracted the coronavirus.
Well, that's why they shut it. They shut it down because of him.
Sure. They had no choice to because you don't want to get the rest of the players.
So with no fans though, it's funny. Charles Barkley was on with Colin Cowherd today, and I heard him. And Charles says that for him it would be impossible to play without fans. He says they shouldn't play if there's not going to be fans there. I would think that opinion is in the minority. Do you agree with that?
Well, hey, look, I know exactly what Charles is talking about because if you play without fans, you're basically just playing pickup basketball. Because in pickup basketball, you tend to be more individualistic than you are team oriented, and then there's times in a game when you just feel that I don't have any more to give. Well, the crowd serves as a great pick-me-up in that regard. So just the atmosphere that the crowd provides is something that's really unique, and you don't want to eliminate from the game. But again, this situation with this virus is just so much unknown about it that if it can be spread through large crowds, the likelihood of it being spread through large crowds, then I'm almost for just playing without the fans until there is no more threat relative to this virus.
Yeah, that's just it's really incredible. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's become the superstar and all this, he said he had a quote last night, I believe, and this he wasn't talking about sports, but it goes across every line when he said, I think he said, the only no one person or no one league, I guess if we're talking about sports, should set a timetable. The virus sets the timetable. So I guess we're all just kind of waiting. Everything you've said has been very informative and it makes sense. But then again, if we don't have a cap on if the curve isn't flattened, say by mid-May, I don't think we're going to see NBA or NHL or baseball, right? I mean, we're going to go with how this virus goes.
Right, and I think that Gary Bettman is about the only commissioner of the four big majors who hasn't given a timetable.
Yeah.
He says, I'm not going to give a timetable. I don't know. I'll know when the experts say they know. And so he's refused to give any type of a restart, whereas baseball and basketball have kind of given a general idea of when they expect to start. And I'll say this about hockey. I mean, when they start, they have to finish out their regular season. They can't just come straight to the playoffs, because if you looked in the Eastern Conference, there were like 5 teams within like 3 points of each other in terms of that final wild card playoff spot. And in the West, there were like 6 teams within a few points as well. So, including the Arizona Coyotes. So you almost had to play out the remaining regular season, whereas in basketball, there are a few teams that had maybe had an outside shot at overtaking the Memphis Grizzlies for that final wild card spot in the West. But outside of that, it was pretty much a lock. You knew what you're going to get. So I think more people are intrigued by how the NHL will finish out its season just because there were so many teams that were within a few points of a playoff spot.
So let's lastly talk about something that NBC, which is what you are, Channel 12, has every 4 years with the Olympics, right? 2020, the Olympics were supposed to be in Tokyo later in just a few months. It was going to start. That has been pushed back. The announcement came down a few days ago, pushed back until 2021. That decision has been confirmed. It has indeed been made. What does that mean for you, for Bruce Cooper?
Well, for me personally, it was supposed to be my final swan song.
Because you're retiring, yes.
Right.
You were going to retire when? Right after the Olympics concluded?
Right. And so I was to host an Olympic Zone show from July 24th through August 9th. And that was going to be my sign-off period, was the closing ceremonies of the Summer Games. But with no Summer Games there anymore, I'm just really not sure what we're going to do. But that was the original plan. And so maybe I step away sooner, or maybe I hang around to August 9th just because maybe some of these leagues that we didn't expect to be playing are playing in around that same time period. But that's what it meant for me personally. My final salute to my 34-year TV career.
That would have been So that's been upended. It was the right decision, though. I think across the board, everyone thought that. Correct?
Without question. Look, I was proud of Canada, and I was proud of Australia for those two countries to say we're not going to play.
Yeah, they said that beforehand.
It's not safe.
Yes,
and I think it started domino with other countries to where Japan had no choice but to make the right decision.
Well, Bruce, we have seen so many wild and crazy things happen in the sports world, but it was always 99% contained to the sports world, and it was done in a fun way. Wild and wacky, crazy finishes. The sports world has never seen this, and I guess we're all learning. We're all getting through it. You have provided some very valuable insight to sports fans just in this podcast. I learned a few things just by listening to some of the insight that you have given. So we appreciate you leading in the moment when it comes to local and national sports, Bruce Cooper. And I hope that some way, because that would have been a perfect send-off for you, closing ceremonies, Olympics, and Bruce Cooper closes out his television career. But hopefully it'll work out in an even better way somehow with your swan song. I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. Right?
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words for sure, Chris, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast.
We appreciate you. Thanks so much, Bruce Cooper, Channel 12, leading in the moment. And folks, we'll see you next time.